I like this starting point. This is the standard form, and that's the general form. And it's really easy to go from standard form to general form because you can just expand. You just multiply things out, gather like terms, super easy. Okay? But if we have the general form, it's not very helpful for graphing. So when the equation is in general form, most of its characteristics are not helpful. So we want to change from general form to standard form, and we can use a method of completing the square that's very simple and very similar to what we did before. Okay? So then I would like you to, at the bottom of the page, you have some space, and we'll write this up. And like I just showed you, the completing the square is a little bit different than solving. So changing to standard form and solving by completing the square are slightly different. So we're going to write out the steps. And as we write out the steps on this side, we're going to, at the same time, have an example on this side. So step number 1, and step number 1 is we're going to factor out A out of the first 2 terms. So the example that we're going to do is y equals, here's the general form, 2x squared plus 8x plus 1. That's our example. So for step 1, and sometimes the steps make sense if you think about what you want. This is what I want. I want the A factored out. I want something perfectly squared, and I want a number at the end. So for step 1, it makes sense to factor the 2 out, because that would be your A by itself. It makes sense to keep the 1 there, because we need a number at the end anyway. So it makes sense that you're only going to factor the 2 out of the first 2 terms, leaving you with x squared plus 4x. 2. Leave spaces and complete the square. So I'm going to leave a space here and a space here. Oops. Back to green. And that's enough information for me to complete the square. I know that this hint of the 4x tells me that it has to be x plus 2. Now we have work to do here, because we have to put numbers into the spaces. Okay, so I guess step 3. Put numbers in the spaces. And I'm going to put in brackets here, don't forget to distribute. We'll see that in the example. And simplify. So we need to add numbers into our spaces. I've completed the square. I know that it's x plus 2 squared, which means this has to be a plus 4. But you're not just allowed to add 4 to one side of an equation. That doesn't make it equal anymore. So the second space is to compensate. And this is where the red line comes in. Don't forget to distribute. You have actually added 8. By putting a plus 4 in that space, you've actually added 8. So to compensate, I have to subtract 8. Which means when I simplify 1 minus 8, will give me minus 7. And now I am done. I have changed it from general form to standard form. And I know that the vertex is at minus 2, minus 7. I know that it opens up. I know it goes over 1, up 2, over 1, up 6. And now I can graph it super easily. Question? You're good? Question?
Well, where do we get like the plus 4 and the negative 8 from again?
Okay, so if you actually, like you had this x plus 2 squared, right? If you actually multiplied that out, FOILed it out, you would get x squared plus 4x plus 4. But there wasn't a plus 4 there. I had to put that plus 4 in there in order for this, because this part here needs to match up with that. But if I add 4 here, my equation is no longer balanced. So I need to compensate in the second space. Normally, if you add 4, you'd think, oh, subtract 4. But that 4 got hit by this too. We've actually added 8. So in the second space, to compensate, we have to subtract. And you can always check if you took your final answer and multiplied it out. Right? If I took this and multiplied it out, this would be y equals 2. Well, I already figured out this looks like that. And then if I distribute my 2, I'm going to get 2x squared plus 8x. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 7 would be plus 1. It matches up perfectly with what I started with, which means I've completed the square perfectly. It's much easier to multiply something out to match it up than it is to start here and change it to standard form. But that's what happens most often. Most often you have the general form and you want to graph, so you have to change it from its general form to its standard form. So here's our first question. We'll go to example 1. Determine the coordinates of the vertex of the parabola. So we want the vertex. One of the ways you could do it is you could just do a table of values until you find symmetry, and maybe that would work. But that could take a long time. So instead, we are going to change it to standard form. If I want to change it to standard form, I would need to factor out that 3. I still have the plus 7 on the outside. I take the 3 out of 3x squared, it just gives me x squared. 3 out of a minus 12 will be minus 4. And then I leave a space here, and I leave a space there. The minus 4 actually gives us a hint. We know what it's going to be squared. It has to be x minus 4 minus 2. That's the only thing that you could FOIL that would give you a minus 4x. But if I do x minus 2 squared, and I actually multiply it out, I would find out there has to be a plus 4 there. But what have I actually added? I've actually added 12 to the side when I do that plus 4. So to compensate, I would need to subtract 12, giving me there's the standard form, and now super easy for me to say what my vertex is. My vertex is going to be at 2, negative 5. Okay, so try some of these on your own, 3, 4, 5, and 6.